Yes, we are live.
I see
How's,
it too.
how's Rachel doing today?
It's been a rough day, and it is also very synchronous, talking about the synchronicities of life, that I am going to be involved in this dialogue about disconnection. I had to do a
Hmm.
lot of good coping today to reconnect. So, some personal experience today with this very thing, which I think is no coincidence.
Yeah, it's funny how life's obstacles just weave into everything that we're doing, right? All the time.
For sure.
Life is the greatest guru. Okay. Well, for those of you that have showed up like a Swiss watch right on time, I am Brian Chaplin, the founder of Medicine Box, joined by my wonderful co-collaborator, Dr. Rachel Lamb. We're going to be leading a presentation and a workshop discussion, more of a discussion, really. So we'd love all of your participation. There's a chat feature there. If you want to join the stage and actually show your face on stage, don't be shy. We can do some fun things there. And this is more of a guided conversation. Your inputs are valuable and acknowledged. All questions will get answered. No bad questions. So drop them in the chat there. And this month's presentation is on, or workshop. It's not really a presentation. This is more of a co-collaborative space. Think of it as your microdosing community center. And workshop number 7, the topic connection in disconnection, and why we feel disconnected in this modern world, this modern crisis world, or what I always like to say, this post COVID world. We're so connected with technology and social media and all the other things that many of us feel super disconnected from ourselves, from
Mm.
others, from Mother Nature, from the universe, God, the divine, the Tao, the absolute, whatever word you want to use for higher consciousness. In the topics of discussion today, we'll be going through understanding the normalcy of disconnection in an abnormal society, the dynamics of societal isolation and its pervasive effects on our mental health, establishing deeper connections with or without microdosing can combat feelings of isolation and improve mental well being. We'll go through some techniques to cultivate and maintain meaningful connections within a community of like minded humans. On these workshops, everybody, Dr. Rachel always likes to give us some exercises that we can take away with us. We do them, on screen, and they're just really fun exercises that you can take and weave into your day-to-day life. And of course, a lot of you are here to learn more about microdosing, the tool, the routines, the protocols. But always there's a reason why we're microdosing. There's always these underlying layers that we are facing, or the obstacles in our life that we're facing. And today is disconnection and how to reconnect. And of course, microdosing's effect on detachment and isolation. Again, my name is Brian Chaplin, the founder of Medicine Box. And the workshop's going to be led by my esteemed colleague here, Dr. Rachel Lamb, a Ph.D. in educational psychology and professor in the Department of Psychological Science at Weber State University in Utah. She's an author, published on medium.com, Nature, and a variety of other publications. I'll let her talk a little bit about that when she shares her story. But without further ado, I'd like to start off this workshop with a great quote that a friend of mine shared with me today. She's a somatic therapist moving towards psychedelic integration therapy. And we were talking about acceptance. And I think a lot of us in this world are disconnected because it's hard for us to accept reality as it is. And we like to push back on our reality. And when we're not accepting our reality, that usually leads to suffering or disconnection. So Jack Kornfield, you've probably heard of him. He does a lot of work around the hero's journey. But how about we all close our eyes, whoever's paying attention here, and just let these, words and syllables just kind of come through the ears and bobble around in our psyche, but really just try to embody this great quote about radical acceptance. So, quote, radical acceptance is about embracing life as it is, not as we wish it to be. It's a practice of saying yes to our experience, even when that experience is difficult or painful. This doesn't mean we become passive or resign ourselves to injustice. Rather, it means we stop fighting against reality, which allows us to respond with clarity and compassion. End quote, Jack Kornfield. So that's a good one. And Rachel, if you have anything to say about that quote before you kick us off in this workshop, I would love to hear your insights on that. And looking forward to a great discussion, everybody. Thanks for joining.
No, that was great. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I know that we've been able to share some personal stories as part of these discussions that we've been doing. And that quote actually leads me right into where I can start with just hard things happening in my own life right now. So I love the part that says something about injustice, instead of I'll say what it meant to me, because I don't want to mess up the exact words, but there are some what I see as injustices I'm dealing with. There are people out there in this society that don't understand the benefits of plant medicine and don't understand the benefits of things like psilocybin and other psychedelics and microdosing. And so I am in a battle with some of that, which is a hard thing, because I do want to be public about it, and I want to be able to speak about it because I know how much it helps people and has helped me also. And so in the pressures of fighting, some of that, I started to feel the disconnection happening in myself. And so if you're a person that's had depression before, and I think anxiety can bring this on too when you've got really severe anxiety, and you go to your freeze mode, you go to your checkout mode, right? I think that's when you're in danger of getting in trouble with losing that connection, one, to just yourself, your authentic self, and then losing the ability to kind of connect in with other people, with your own values, with your own spiritual life that you lead. And so this is a topic, this is very close to me right now. And so I know we talk a lot about Gabor Mate, but he has written a book called The Myth of Normal. Our society values productivity. I mean, I don't think that's news to anybody, right? Our societal systems are set up to benefit its own survival, is what I have come to understand. And so I think we're all mucking around in this, trying to figure out, oh, there it is. Thank you. Yep, I have mine's out in my other room. We're trying to find meaning and find some value and connection in all this, but not much of our actual societal and our societal systems give us the space to connect. So there's a lot, I think, that we're fighting. Post-COVID, COVID was hard on us. COVID was traumatizing. And it took away already the limited, potential for connection. We already live in America, in first world America, in modern society, let's call it that. We are encouraged and affirmed and validated when we produce a lot for society. we are working great at our jobs and we're making lots of money and we've got big houses and we can show this status. I mean, those are the things that we are bombarded with over and over. And those are all things that I think not only have nothing to do with connection, but distract us from connection as well. So we hit COVID, and then here we are now. We can't even see people. We can't even be in space with people in person. And so I think we're all coming out of a traumatized time. And I think this idea of connection and disconnection is really important right now as we're trying to figure out how to come back to things. I also believe that since COVID has happened, many people are recognizing that they're not happy with their lives and values in productivity. It's not serving us well. It's creating isolation just by focusing on those things. And so we have a battle. We have a battle that we have to engage in to find the meaning that fills our cups, if I can say it that way. And so one of the things, as I was thinking about this talk today and kind of preparing for this talk, one of the things that came to me was a book that I read. I was actually in a very, very severe depression about 6 years ago. I was in the rat race. I was working way more hours than I wanted to be, was at a high level, high paying job, and was the most miserable that I've ever been. And I did sink into a very, very deep depression at that time. And I'm going to use the word depersonalization or derealization. The amount of disconnection I felt at the time was very extreme. The way I describe it, and I might have described it this way in some of the other talks that we've had here even, I felt like I was trapped inside a thick glass box and I could see out of it and people could see me, but they couldn't hear me. I couldn't hear them. I couldn't penetrate it. I couldn't touch them. I could not get beyond these glass walls. Like I was just stuck in this glass bubble and unable to connect to the God I believe in, any kind of sense of spirituality, other human beings, my own purposes, my own things I value. And so I read a book called Lost Connections by Johann Hari is the author's name. And this book talked about, and it's along the lines of what Gabor Mate says about society itself is toxic to us, especially with regard to connection. He says that depression isn't caused by a chemical imbalance. That's not what causes depression. What causes depression is disconnection, this kind of disconnection that we're talking about, disconnection and isolation. So it's not just not having, a big friend group or a community or something like that. It is disconnection from our own sense of what meaning is to us. So what's meaningful, what is meaningful to us? I think you ask some people out there that are stuck in that rat race and they can't even answer that question. So I was thinking about all this and about how at the time that I had read that, I just, I could agree with it. Even at the state I was in, I was like, okay, yes, this seems right. This seems like what I'm experiencing as depression felt so much like an inability, an incapacity to actually connect to anything at all, And it was a time where I didn't want to be alive. I didn't want to live feeling that way. And so lots of things can come into this, right? We live in this society that gives us, a lot of extrinsic, if I can use that word, extrinsic rewards for our productivity, right? Like you work really hard, you get the bonus. You go and participate in society and you get your job and you get your 2 weeks vacation every year. Yay. Like, and then you work 50, 60 hours a week the rest of the time. So all of those extrinsic rewards, research shows that extrinsic rewards have no effect on depression at all. So having those goals and getting those things isn't going to help you when you're in that slump of, kind of meaninglessness. So there is research that says that intrinsic rewards, so these are the internal things. This is what, like finding a purpose, or at least on the search and on the journey of a purpose. We all feel good when we feel like we're contributing to our communities in some way that makes a difference. You can certainly, you can give money, you can give resources and those kinds of things, and that's a beautiful way to give and contribute. But there's something different about actually getting into relationship with human beings in some way. So, some of the things that they have shown that does help things like depression is just doing volunteer work for a cause that you care about, things like that. So the research is there to show that what society imposes on us, those values that are imposed on us, are not healthy for us, are probably toxic for us. And so again, we have to kind of drill in and fight back and search for those things that we can have those intrinsic rewards in. And so I think that it's hard to do this sometimes, especially when you're stuck in that rat race, or you're already feeling bad, right? You're already feeling depressed. It takes a big jump to kind of get to the next space. And so when you're already feeling disconnected, you don't want to reach out to people. So this is kind of a vicious cycle, right? You're already
isolation.
Right. Then you end up in isolation. So isolation is dangerous because human beings are communal. We are communal animals. We are herd animals. We cannot survive if our parents abandon us as babies. We are very, very needy kinds of beings. We will die if we are abandoned as babies. So there's all these biological mechanisms in our brains that wire us up for communication and for bonding. We have deep structures in our brain. The limbic system of the brain, the emotional center that's still used. Sometimes people are calling it a different aspect. Deep in the center, kind of the inner part of the brain, we have structures that wire up based on the interactions we have with our parents, based on the interactions we have with our caregivers. When those aren't there, our brains actually atrophy in those places. They know this from studies with orphans that were abandoned, and children that get abandoned, or children that end up, in some situation where they're kind of taken over by a pack of animals or something like that. These really extreme cases that they've been able to go in with neuroimaging technology and see the brain is atrophied if you miss out on connection when you're a baby. When you're in the first 14 months of your life, the structures for attachment and bonding are wiring up in the brain dependent on your environment. And so this isn't just us growing up and getting into this adult world and like, oh God, now we have to find connection. I mean, we are biologically built to exist with others in community and to exist with others in relationship. And so a lot of what I experienced at my time where it was really bad, and what I did today when I was starting to feel that disconnection seeping into me because I was stressed. I was really highly stressed. I forced myself to reach out to safe people. I mean, that's kind of a one step. And sometimes people go, well, I don't have a safe person. Well, here you are in this community. There's other communities out there. There's a place called The Mighty, which is an app. It's kind of like a mental health social media app. I don't know if you've heard of this one, Brian, but The Mighty is a place where you can go and you can say, I want to kill myself right now. And a bunch of people will write in. The community itself will go, it's not worth it. I'm there too. Heart, heart, heart. It's some little tiny something. If you can do the little tiny something to get yourself past that bump, that'll start to help. But let me stop. Let me break because I want to
Yeah,
give people some time to respond. And
I
Brian's talking.
wanted. Yeah, there's a question coming in from Ben Smith here. Thanks, Ben. In regards to the book you mentioned, I don't remember all the details, but I came away from it thinking that purpose and hope are the cures for depression, and I wanted to uh, trail off on that as well. You mentioned, purpose. I think there's so many people in this quote unquote rat race or living that corporate lifestyle or, the 9 to 5, whatever it might be, that really want to be able to find their purpose, but don't know how to find their purpose. So it
Right.
creates the habitual, hamster wheel, and they may never get off that because let's face it, we need food, shelter, clothing, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need all that. And that is a big leap, as you said. So, a question I have, and it's for a lot of people ask me this question. I mean, this essentially has become my purpose, is building a medicine box with you, Rachel, and my team. And it's been quite a journey, and I haven't given up because I feel when you have purpose, you're tethered to the purpose, and it's always pulling you in that direction, right? It's a calling versus a career, a job, or work, right? And a lot of people identify around what their job title is, what their work is, what their career is, right? It's this mind identification. And some of the things, funny tactics I use when people ask, "So, what do you do, Brian?" And they're searching for the answer of, "What do you do for work?" Right? And it's like, well, I ski, I play guitar, I research, I ride my bike, I go swimming in the lake, I hike mountains, I meditate, and I say all these things that are more on the to be list versus the to do list. So I think the discovering purpose is actually writing down your to-do list, but next to it, don't forget to write the to-be list. And discovering that purpose is embodying all these other things and hobbies and routines and rituals and practices that can help you discover that purpose. So if you wanted to add some more around, like, how do you find your purpose in this what is it, late stage capitalism people call it, or this capitalistic materialistic society, and then answer Ben's question about his takeaway on that book.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at that there. So there's some things I was thinking through as I was remembering that book. I do think it is so hard. It is so hard to kind of go back. You have to go backwards a little bit. So one of the ways that you can get a sense of purpose is think about what you enjoyed doing as a child. So go back to your childhood. Go back to your age 5, age 6, age 7. What did you love to do then? You know, I mean, you love to play probably, right? But there it is, play. So, how can you play? Is there any way that you can play in your busy corporate lives or whatever it is you're dealing with, right? I loved to color and draw when I was little. I remember that, and it's making me even think now, like, gosh, I should sit down and just do a little sketching, for 10 minutes. I mean, it's just a little something. Maybe you loved pretend play, and so maybe you go shopping and you buy a costume hat and you wear it around for a day. Just those little aspects of, when we're children, we're not so jaded, right? Yet we haven't experienced all the traumas that, you go through by the time you get to an adult, right? And so I think that's one little bit. Maybe you loved playing on the playground when you were a kid. You know what? After work, if you've got 10 minutes, go swing on some swings. Go and feel that in your body. So I think you can start with really small things, and remind yourself and remind your body, because so much memory lives in your body, right? Trauma lives in your body, memory lives in your body. Remind yourself of the things that made you feel joy when you were small and made you feel good inside of yourself, and just start there and see where the next step leads you. And that's the hard part too. I think we also, in our society and culture, we get locked into like goal setting and planning, which is, probably connected to productivity, if you come back around to it.
Mhm.
And so you have to be able to stop yourself, I think, sometimes and go, you know what? I'm going to sit down on my 15-minute break and I'm going to doodle. Just going to doodle. That's it. Maybe you do that 5 times and just that's all it is. If nothing else, you are giving yourself 15 minutes of being in the present moment and doing something that feels good in your body. So you do that for a little bit. And then what happens, I think, is your creative brain starts to kick on again. And I think that's important for thinking about, okay, so like what is there next? Or maybe you're stuck in like a dead end kind of job. Maybe you're not this high level career person. Maybe you're in a different place and you're so tired and you have kids at home and you have to cook. And you could have all those things. Just whatever that little tiny thing is, 5 minutes before you go to bed, if you have trouble even remembering what you used to do, I tell people, when I work with people in coaching and one-on-ones, sometimes it's just like, I say, people get stuck swiping, they're on Instagram or they're on whatever. And I ask, is there anything on there that's just like not connected to the ills of society? Is there anything on there that's not the news that you can, and somebody might say like, well, I really like watching animal videos of animal babies. So you know what? Maybe that's where you start and you can ease yourself, to something else. Another thing that I actually really love is reading children's books. I have all of my daughter's children's books. Like we saved them all. And sometimes I just go and I read a children's book to myself and just feel what that feels like inside my body. So the more practice I think you get at feeling into yourself and feeling into your body, the easier it's going to be. And it's going to leave you in a state of less stress, which is going to help your kind of creative part of you kick back on. So then you can go, well, hey, maybe I've always wanted to like work with animals. Maybe there's a place you can go volunteer at the animal shelter. The little things can build up to something that can then build up to something else. So if I can share just more personally, I've always wanted to help people. I mean, that when I was a little kid, I used to say, well, I'm going to be a doctor because doctors help. Well, I guess I did become a doctor, right? I became a different kind of doctor. I wanted to, be a medical doctor because medical doctors help people. And then I got to high school biology and had to dissect a fetal pig. And nope, that wasn't good for me. And I was just like, no medical school for me. I am never going to be able to dissect a cadaver like that I won't pass. So this little funny little thing steered me in a different direction, right? So I go through my life, I do my thing. I did end up in research working with people, working with children, but realizing in that field that it didn't feel like the right kind of helping. I knew I wanted to help people, so how do I do that? So I had my crash and burn 6 years ago. Left my career and I started from scratch. I started volunteering at my daughter's school. I just, I think I did like an hour a week or an hour every other week. And I just felt what that was like to be there, like not for just the like money or something, and feel that sense of working with people. And just starting in that really tiny place led to kind of another thing that I got to do, which was work with a couple professors in the field of higher education in prison, like very random kind of, but it was a place where I could see that they were really working with people who were incarcerated and trying to collect their stories. And that felt like, oh, like I can help, like kind of fight injustice in this small way here. And that feels good to me, and then that was contract work. So I was kind of building up again. And I really fell into this space where I get to do healing work now, is what I call it. I work with people one-on-ones. I work with people in groups. I use different medicines to work with people. And so my life today does feel like I have at least a part of it. It's not my full-time part, but it's a part of it that gives me a sense of calling. And I had to remember that. I had to remember that today. And I had people remind me because I was in a hard place earlier today. And so all of that kind of back to the book that we just mentioned. Some of the things that they talk about is, there's a whole shift that could happen in society that we just can't touch right now, right? But if we are working through our part, so if each individual of us is trying to find connection somewhere, and it again, maybe it's just with you first, maybe it's your connection back to yourself, maybe it's your connection back to your inner child. We had a whole talk that we did about the inner child, right? Another is working through your trauma. Our traumas have disconnected us in a lot of ways. A lot of times when you especially experience a significant trauma for you, it's all relative, right? We're all different. When you experience a significant trauma for yourself, you disconnect. That's what your, dare I say, soul does, mind, your psyche. You disconnect for your own benefit, for survival. It's that bad of a situation, which, whatever it is, again, is personal to you. One trauma that's for somebody isn't traumatic for another person, right? So don't get into that bad place of categorizing trauma. Whatever it is that made you feel so unsafe that you had to check out, that was a point of disconnection. We've done this a lot. We have a pattern of disconnecting. And so going through and working through with a therapist, with a guide, with a coach, with a spiritual leader, with whoever, somebody is helpful, right? You can do it on your own. You can do it with workbooks and strategies and things too. Very helpful if you can do it with another human that can co-regulate for you and help you feel safe. So that's another aspect to all this too, is we need other human beings because we co-regulate each other. So when you get into a space with another person, if you're wound up and they get wound up, you notice how that makes you feel, then you're both super wound up. You feed each other that way. If you can sit with a person that can be calm and can use a calming voice and can look at you and have gentleness, what starts to happen is you mirror that person. We have a part of our brain called mirror neurons. They mirror what is in front of us. If you watch someone throw a ball, do you know that there's a part of your brain that shows activation as if you actually threw the ball? That's what the mirror neuron system is. So a lot of scientists are looking at that to say that we learn communication via the mirror neuron system. We co-regulate each other via the mirror neuron system. So working through your traumas with a safe person in that way, that is also going to help you reconnect, because we have so much practice of disconnecting from the hard things we've gone through. So it's a good book. It's a good read. There's a lot. Gabor Mate's The Myth and Normal out there is a good one to read too. The Body Keeps the Score is a good one. I'm sure we've mentioned that one before. That's Bessel van der Kolk. Thomas Hubel has a lot of other good stuff on trauma and collective trauma and reconnecting. One of the really beautiful ways he describes trauma is traumas that start to just pile on are like frozen layers of water. So we need to liquefy. We need to work on liquefying those frozen parts. And that is going to be steeped in connection back to yourself, to your inner child, to the things that mean something to you, and to other people. And then, of course, to a higher, greater something out there than yourself. That's a big one that tons of research shows. When you have any kind of faith in something bigger than yourself, you tend to feel more connected and you tend to be in better health. So.
Thanks, Rachel. As you were speaking, I was hearing your journey with the doodling and everything, and just giving up your old life 6 years ago and essentially rebuilding, right? Rebuilding towards connection, and those small incremental steps are getting back to the basics and just doing the small things, right, that are right in front of you and can be accessed, lead to compounding exponential results. And with that said, real quick, just some quick bites on what are some of the positive symptoms of connection, and then some symptoms of disconnection for anyone that might be listening that might be like, whoa, am I disconnected or am I connected or am I in purgatory? So, maybe just some quick bites and words, that might help identify those two,
Yeah,
those two
that's
categories. Yeah.
yeah. I think because I'm feeling good again, doing this talk, doing something meaningful, talking to people about meaningful things, right? So I know that when you feel connection, your body is calm. Um, your part of your nervous system that is working is the part that um, slows your breathing actually, and lets you feel relaxed. Lets your pupils kind of come back down when you have a fight flight response. You pupils dilate, your digestive system turns off, you literally body gets in a state of needing to fight or flee. Blood pumps to your limbs, so you feel all that. It's a surge of kind of this um, buzzing energy. So I think when you feel the sense of connection, you're in the present. You're in the present moment. Your mind, you're talking to someone face to face, and you're not thinking about something else. When you're disconnected, I think that happens a lot of time. You can be engaged in a task or even in a conversation, but your mind is somewhere else, and it's either in the future or it's in the past. You're thinking about something you didn't do or you should have done or that went bad or whatever, right? Or you're worrying about something. So I think when we're kind of stuck in disconnection, we're probably in a state of stress, which is in our body. We're not in the present moment. We're not able to be fully present with people in front of us or tasks we're working on, things that are in front of us. When it can get really severe, I think you actually lose access to like kind of who you are almost, and that's when it gets pretty bad. So if you're down that road, that's a scary place to be. When you feel connected, you have a sense of, again, just meaningfulness. You have a sense of I'm here for a purpose, and it doesn't have to be some grandiose thing like I'm here because I'm a good friend, or I'm here because I'm a good mother, or whatever those things are. um, you acknowledge them. You're in acknowledgement and in recognition of those parts of you. I mean, maybe you're a very deep spiritual person, and that's amazing, and you are you're connected to that idea, that concept about yourself. um I think when you are in disconnection, uh you're distracted, and that's because you're probably, again, you're in the past or you're in the future. You're not in the present moment, and so you find your mind wandering. You find yourself like suddenly you don't know what you're doing. You started to go about something or a task, and then you're like, oh, I have not paid attention. Like, I took this yogurt out and it's sitting on the counter and the spoon's over there. And I think I wanted yogurt 5 minutes ago. It's kind of that, like, I think you feel a sense of like being discombobulated, um, and just kind of like you're missing some part of you's missing. That's what I tend to feel when I'm stuck in that really bad disconnection. Though one of the ways I would describe it to people is that I feel like my personality's gone. It's like locked away. Like someone's removed it from me and put it in a locked box, and I cannot access it. And that's part of like the depersonalization. That's a terrible feeling to have. When you're connected, you feel like yourself, and you feel good about who that is. And you might still be working that 9 to 5, but you have this sense of, you're going about your day mindful. You're in the present moment. You're doing the stuff. You're not exhausted. I think when you're disconnected, you're exhausted because
Mhm.
your mind is spinning somewhere else a lot of
Mhm.
that time. So you feel rested, you feel calm, you feel kind of some meaningfulness for yourself when you're feeling connected.
I have a good quote for connection is true connection is when thoughts cease to exist,
Oh yeah. Yep.
where we can just be
Yeah.
present in the now. Yeah.
That made me think of like the thought train. Like, don't jump on the thought train.
Yeah.
I don't know if you, because I have a 16-year-old now, but when she was little, we watched all the movies, all the kids' movies and all the Disney movies. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Inside Out. It's a movie about emotions, and there's the thought train. You can get off on the thought train, which can then derail off into some, space you don't want to be, but that's good. Just kind of want to remind people there's a link in the chat if you want to join us, if you want to pop on live with us and get in this conversation and dialogue, ask questions live. We love that.
Don't be shy. Let's connect.
Yeah, let's connect. We when we were running on Zoom, we had kind of everybody in the room together. So we'd love you to come on if you feel good about that.
And then let's take the next, we do have a little exercise we want to do led by Rachel. But the next 30 minutes or so, we'll discuss how, microdosing weaves into, getting us from a place of disconnection to connection, and how that can help us expand our minds and expand our souls and, emotional landscape, if you will. And I wanted to also throw out there that a member of our community that's in our program, he has a really cool insight that's been carried with him all his life. And he's 70, and he's always been searching for this Garden of Eden, as he calls it, or maybe the Fountain of Youth. And that's really kept him grounded in this, childlike wonder, right? Even at the ripe young age of 70 years old. And, part of his microdosing process is, searching for this Garden of Eden, whatever that might be for you, right? So I think that's a mythical place, but it can be discovered within ourselves and within others. So we got Ben on the stage. Hey, Ben.
Yay. Hi.
Hey, what's up?
Nice to see you, Ben.
Good to meet you. Can I call you Rachel or Dr. Lamb?
No, please call me Rachel. That's great.
Rachel, Brian, good to meet you guys.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining, man.
You brought up the, you're talking about the issue of being connected or disconnected. And I'm just really curious. I can think of so many things that might mean. The idea of not feeling my personality, did you say that was what you would call depersonalization?
Yeah, that's part of it. I would say yes. Like,
is that
the
same as the connection thing?
I think that's a symptom. I would call it like a symptom of disconnection.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how
thinking with that? Yeah.
How does the microdosing, what's the experience you have if you're having issues like that of depersonalization or losing connection with yourself? Like, I've dealt with depression my whole life. I've never found that meds work for me in the long term, maybe for a few weeks, but then things get worse. Yeah. So I've had psychedelic experiences in my life, but it's not something that like a full-blown psychedelic experience is just not something I'm craving after it's over. It's so intense. But I do experience like this really big boost in my self-awareness. Like the last time I took a full dose of acid, I remember feeling like I immediately was like, oh, I've been like incredibly selfish lately. And just all these realizations happen. So I've never tried microdosing, but just from those experiences, I think, okay, well, there has to be something to that. But what if I've only had this experience of like just ripping off the mask? What is it like to do it in a microdosing setting?
Do it bit by bit. No, I love this. Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing and
Sure.
Just vulnerable in this space. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between like a psychedelic journey and like taking SSRIs or SNRIs, right? So a lot of the meds we get in the Western medical space, I think they're just Band-Aids over the wounds. They act on the symptoms, right? If the symptoms are accurately assessed by the person that's giving you the medicines and the person knows something about that particular medicine and what they do, which is often not the case. It's trial and error, try this, see which one works, and we hope it's good. And if you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, this should help, that kind of thing. I think psychedelic medicines, and this is, there's documentation throughout history of cultures, tribal cultures, indigenous cultures, and communities that have used these medicines to help people heal. They are healing medicines for people. And when the science comes in and looks at them and the biology comes in, they don't band-aid the wound. They work in a different way that we still can't quite understand, but they're more like a catalyst. So it's a catalyst for you to be shown something, to see something that you need to see. So in your case, like you saw, like, oh, like I think I've been selfish. Okay, I didn't see this before. There's something that the psychedelic medicines do that is really particular to opening up this awareness for you. And so those are two really different mechanisms to work on to deal with like symptoms of depression or symptoms of mental illness. The big journeys, I think are very helpful when they're done in safe space and when they're done typically with a guide. I know people do them without guides and can have great benefit. The other part to that I think is sometimes missing in our society for sure is integration. So I talk a lot about integration whenever I do work with people. If I am working with people that are doing the macro journeys, I do integration with them afterwards for at least a month. So we're talking about that experience. I'm a person that can prompt you or that can hold space for you or that can listen to you, whatever it is, and help you now take this big experience that you've just had and start to bring that into your daily life in new ways. So it might be through new habit building or things like that, new realizations you have about how you want to live differently. So now let's come to microdosing. There's a lot of good research that's showing that the neuroplasticity we get from the big macro journeys, which is part of the reason integration is so important, because you have a higher degree of neuroplasticity for about a month is what they think after a macro journey. So this is a good time to really try to make change, because the changes you are making and practicing are going to rewrite that old patterning in your mind. Microdosing, even taking a little bit, and there's lots of different protocols for it to do. You take a few days on, a few days off. You don't need to take it every day. You take a very, very small amount. It's a sub psychedelic amount. You should not feel a psychedelic experience from taking a microdose. They're very, very safe. It's extremely safe to microdose. You are giving yourself a little bit, you're kind of increasing that plasticity as you're getting involved. So the recommendations are to microdose for a period of time, 3 months, let's say. Okay, so you might be going. The other part of that's really important is that you are putting effort into how you want to be different. So maybe the start of it is just going through what is it that I just don't like in my life, or what is it that I feel like could be bringing out these feelings of depression, or you're doing active things like you're journaling and reflecting. You're creating some kind of intentional setting for yourself. A lot of times when we talk about microdosing with the Medicine Box program is, treat this as sacred time, even if it's for a short period, because what you're doing is you're just instilling now into your day a time to sit with yourself and be in the present moment. You take a microdose, 2 weeks in is usually when we see people are kind of like, oh, something is shifted. And you might not know what that is, but if you've got someone you're working with, they can help you kind of discover that. And then it kind of leads to the next and the next and the next thing, I think. So one of the analogies that we use is like, if you've got a yard full of leaves, you can blast it out with a leaf blower. That's like a macro journey, right? The microdose is like, let me rake a few leaves and put them in the bag. Let me rake a few more tomorrow and put them in the bag. You still clear the yard. You still are able to release some of those things like bogging you down, if you can think of it that way, or to release some of that trauma. It's just over a period of time, and it's without that kind of big psychedelic experience. And so I think a lot of people that try it and go through it, are skeptical, and you don't take the medicine and like feel it necessarily right away. If you take too much, you might. So be careful. But you have to figure out what that is for you. And some people, there's different things you can look for. Like one person, I think they said they yawn, and they noticed that, okay, they were kind of yawning. That's a vagus response. That's a vasovagal response. So that something's happening in your body system from these small amounts that don't, take you to where you can't like function. I mean, you don't want to take a few hits of LSD and go do anything else. Like go be in a safe space, don't drive, like all those things. Taking a microdose is way, way different than that. And so I think that one of the key things with whatever it is you're doing is you have to be doing the work alongside of it. You have to be doing like, the self-care, the creating the new coping skills, the learning, the being open to whatever it is that awareness brings, which might be hard and painful. I would imagine getting, like, oh gosh, I've been selfish. Like that can bring some people to shame. And then you're dealing with shame on top of that. So just being in a really compassionate space with yourself, doing the work alongside of it, is going to enhance all of those benefits that you get from it. And so both I think are good. Both are good and helpful. The microdosing is very, very gentle. So you don't have to do it in this big, kind of.
Yeah, those are risky experiences too.
Right.
I the first time I took psilocybin I took too much and I didn't know what I was doing because I was like 17. And I probably could have used some help understanding what happened there, because it was wild. I've never experienced anything like it since. I don't even know if it was a good thing. But I have friends that will take psilocybin and they'll talk about it in the same way that people talk about like taking shots or something at a party. Like, yeah, I took mushrooms and we had a fun night. And I always think every time I take anything like that, it feels like a very quiet, important sort of thing. It's very strange for me to imagine it being a party drug. It's hard for me to think of fun on it because I'm usually just sitting there thinking like, why does anything exist? Why is it like, just my mind goes to those weird places. But one other question about integration. When you say integration, are you just talking about like the experience of figuring out how to put a feeling into words?
I think it's more figuring out how to take what you've experienced, even in a microdose time, even in your time where maybe you set aside like 15 minutes and you're like, I'm going to, write a good intention. I'm going to take my microdose. I'm going to relax. It's bringing that experience, that sense of awareness into the rest of your life, I think, which takes work. It takes some intention setting and some discipline, I think, to kind of bring those things in. So if you're having, like, let's say, you're going to journal, this is kind of a good way to do an integration practice. You journal at the end of the day when you microdose, or you journal, an hour after and check in with yourself, and you just write down what you're feeling, and then you check in again later in the day. And then you do that over time, and you look back, you go, oh, this is how I was feeling 3 days ago. Here's where I am today. Interesting. And you take that and you consider what that means for you. So it's effortful. It's effortful, I think, work that you're doing to hopefully get you to where somehow you're different, because we want to be different than where we started, right? And that's kind of a beautiful thing too, I think, about particularly the psychedelic medicines. It's not like you got to take your pill every day for the rest of your life because you're band-aiding, the wound, or you're band-aiding these symptoms. It's I'm going to take this. I'm going to check in. I'm going to do some strategies to see if I can bring this deeper into myself. And then you're different 2 weeks later, and then you're different a month later, and you're like, and you might shift. Your strategies might change. Sometimes that scares people because it's like, well, I just want to find the thing that works, and then I want to keep doing it. Well, yes, that's a nice way to think about it, and that's easy. But what you really want is you want to change. You want to feel the way you've been feeling forever, right? So keeping that open mind to, like, you're going to be shifting, and that's going to mean there's going to be new things that you can do and think about. I always tell people, like, this is one thing that does happen with, I was a ketamine. I started out in ketamine assisted psychotherapy 4 years ago. One of the things we would notice, now ketamine's, it doesn't give you the big bang kind of journey, I think, like psilocybin and some of the other psychedelics do. It's not an actual technical psychedelic, but you do 6-10 sessions of that. all of a sudden people are in session 2, 3, and they go, I don't want to smoke cigarettes anymore. I don't feel like drinking anymore. And that's how I used to cope. And I'm like, that's great. That means you're changing. That's what you want. Your old coping mechanisms aren't working anymore. So that's another aspect that's a little like indicator for you when you're like, I used to do this and that doesn't feel right anymore. Take that as a sign of growth. And even that awareness of like, oh, I'm growing is an integrative experience, I think. Sorry, I talk a lot. Did I answer your question? Where did you start?
That's a great answer. Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure, like, I have this image in my head of what I think integration means, and I'm trying to sort it out. Like when I first asked the question, I'm trying to think of an analogy. Like when I think of integration, the way you're talking about it right now, it almost sounds like something that you can work with or work toward, or it also just happens. But when I think of integration, and again, this is just me making stuff up based on what I'm hearing, but like when you add context to something you didn't have, like I had a very stressful conversation or something, and it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense, and then you're like, oh, they were gaslighting me the whole entire time. Like none of this stuff was real. Like that sucks, but now the whole thing makes sense to me, and it puts other things in context. Like, is that the kind of?
I definitely think that yeah, that is an integration, that awareness that you have, and acknowledging the awareness. It's like you're bringing it now into yourself. Like, oh,
Well, and realizing like I've been really selfish lately. At that time, I remember thinking like of a conversation I'd had a few weeks back that kind of hurt my feelings, and then seeing it in this new light, I was like, oh, like I need to go apologize to that person. It puts everything in a new context. The way you feel about the other people is different now. It gets a little easier to take responsibility for yourself. But there are so many different feelings floating around that you don't understand. You haven't figured out how to put them into words.
Yeah.
And they, I guess if you never get them labeled, sometimes they just keep drifting further and further into the back and just running, which like whenever I meet someone who's got a really bad temper, I just always think, you're always so ready to fly off the handle. Like there's some program running back there. You need to run like a software debloater or something. You need to clean that up.
Yeah, definitely. No, I do think, now that I'm coming back to what you said, integration is kind of like naming or being able to put words to things. I do think that is a way of integrating. Not everybody, I'm always careful. I'm so wordy. If you couldn't tell already, I'm verbal. I'm a verbal processor. Some people are different.
That's what this is for.
Yes, right. So, but yeah, that is certainly, when you can name your feelings, you gain power over yourself. You reclaim power, right? And I think feeling empowered in that way, as you continually do those things to feel empowered, you're integrating all of that into this self that you are, which it's growing you. That's what's evolving and growing you. So I do tie the integration into like, where do you see it? You see it in the growth. You see it in the, oh, look, I'm doing this quicker. Oh, look, I just had this awareness right away. Oh, I didn't fly off the handle this time. I took 2 breaths beforehand first. Like when you're able to kind of name it that way, I think that's so helpful to kind of cement, kind of like cementing this new way of being in. And I think that's part of the integration, is kind of getting hardwired in almost kind of these new ways of being.
Yeah, I can see how that would relate to habits. I mean, whenever I get into a good habit of jogging every day, I'm always really surprised the first time I don't have to fight it. I'll kind of wake up and something in my brain will be like, we should probably go ahead and work out. Be like, what did you just say to me? You?
Yeah.
The person, I have to fight you tooth and nail? You want to go work out?
Oh, thank you for sharing so much. Yeah, this is so good. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Appreciate it.
Brian. Brian's got so much experience too.
Yeah, I'm also very wordy as well. But Ben, you mentioned something about, microdosing at a party, and you're like, it's not for fun for you, right? Maybe others.
I can't envision it. I can't see taking psilocybin and like having fun around people. It's
right.
Wild. But they're talking about full doses in this instance, though.
Intention, set, and setting. Yeah, Brian, I did mean to mention that, so I'll let you talk.
And you mentioned that you have a thought of what's the meaning of the universe or something like that, and that's just introspection, right? So microdosing, as we approach it, is it's a tool for introspection, right? To be able to inscape versus escape. And when we're, getting those downloads, so to speak, or those thoughts and that perceptual awareness, that is the introspection that's within you. And then you mentioned a lot about integration, being able to take that thought, do a little work around it, right? That was huge, that you realized you were selfish in an interaction with a certain situation, and then you went and cleaned up your side of the street. That is integration right there. Like it's actually taking these real-time downloads and doing the real-time change right around that. And that's how it happens super quick. And to contextualize the conversation you and Rachel just had, I always say microdosing doesn't have to work. You have to work, right? Microdosing is it's a tool, right? It's the carpenter showing up with his, toolbox to the job site. Those tools aren't going to use themselves, right? You have to put a little bit of action behind it. So integration is really just forward motion and action after you've received that, that introspective experience. And I want to tail off with a question that Rach J asked, and it kind of pertains a little bit about the microdosing, protocol, or the difference between microdosing and macrodosing. So I'll do some quick math here. A standardized microdose is 100 milligrams. And if you do a 90-day journey, our program is based on a 90-day journey. We're going to drop a calendar link in there for you all. I do a free microdosing consult. We talk a little bit about your state of being, some of the obstacles that you're facing, as well as where you want to go in your life. And if you take 100 milligrams of psilocybin, you do every other day over the course of 90 days, let's just cut that in half. So 90 days in half would be 45 days. 45 days times 100 milligrams, that's 4,500 milligrams. There's 1,000 milligrams per gram. Okay, so 1,000 milligrams or 4,500 milligrams divided by 1,000 equals 4.5 grams. Hopefully people followed my verbal math. So over the course of 90 days, you're actually taking 4.5 grams of psilocybin just in a microdose format. So it's a very gradual, consistent, and frequent process, but you're also opening up your perceptual awareness so you can do that integrative work around it. And that's why microdosing is a very approachable, safe, reliable, consistent process if you invite that into your life and give that gift to yourself. And Rachel J, a standardized protocol, there's no right way or wrong way to do this, but there's three pretty standard protocols. I like to think of them as journeys because it's a very individualized experience. There's a lot of trial and error to kind of land on what works for you, and then you can base that around your schedule if you have children or a demanding work life or you work on the weekends. So it's really just choosing the days of the week to have your on days and then off days. And there is the every other day protocol that I just mentioned. That's my favorite one. It's just a very easy one to really get consistent with, Monday on, Tuesday off, Wednesday on, Thursday off, and so on. There's the Fadiman protocol, which is 1 day on, 2 days off, 1 day on, 2 days off. And that's Dr. James Fadiman. He, came up with microdosing essentially using LSD. That one's adopted a lot. And then there's the Stamets protocol, which is developed by Paul Stamets, the famous mycologist. And he does 4 days on, 3 days off. And that one, for me personally, I start to develop a little bit of a tolerance after day 3 and have a bit of a dip after. And I get maybe irritable, restless, discontent because the psilocybin is actually working on your serotonin receptors. So too much of a good thing is a reality. So it's really important to be able to take days off in the week. So those days off are all up to you, but make sure you're always taking days off because that resets the serotonin receptors. And the day off is, Ben, where you want to actually do that integration. So the day on, right, you might get those downloads or there's realizations or that inner voice that's coming in. The day off is that transition day, which I think of as the window of opportunity to do these integrative exercises. Go to the gym, meditate, walk in nature, journal, doodle, all these other things that lead us back to connection. And then boom, the next day you're on the next dose of your protocol. So I hope that helped there. Rach, if you want to schedule a call with me, my calendar is there, and I'd love to be able to talk to you and learn a little bit more about your curiosity around this practice. Hopefully that helped. Anything else, Ben? Feeling good? Ready to
that covered my
microdose?
questions.
Yeah,
I
awesome.
am. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
Thank you
cool.
so much.
And just to, drop in a little bit here with everyone that's listening, this is recorded. Share it with friends, family, coworkers, anyone that you think might benefit from this practice. But at Metasmox, we have a 90-day program that we do, medicine and mentorship, to help you really develop the levels of self-awareness that you aspire to achieve. Self-awareness achieved, that's our tagline, and it's all about creating more self-awareness within ourselves. Awareness is like the sun, right? Wherever you can shine it, you have the ability to transform something. Just like Ben was able to transform maybe a little bit of a resentment, right? A resentment to self because he felt selfish, right? Not to someone else. And he went and he cleaned up his side of the street. And that right there contributes to the topic of this conversation, connection. You were feeling disconnected because you felt selfish, right? And then you were able to reconnect with yourself and then actually make the amends that were needed. And how do you feel about that, Ben? Good, authentic, vulnerable, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's usually some sort of,
stuff.
there's some block that I feel like comes from adolescence. Like when you haven't emotionally matured, it's difficult to admit when you're wrong. And then when you grow out of that, it just looks very silly. But yeah, that was one of those moments where those blocks just disappeared. And I was like, what the hell? What's wrong with me? So yeah.
Nothing.
I'm curious to see how that would happen on like microdosing. Because when you have like a full dose or something, it's, it can be really intense. It's like too much. But you can't leave. You're stuck here. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, okay, it's amazing. I don't ever want to do it again, but I feel amazing.
And what do I do now? What do I do with all of this new information? So Ave here, a member of our community that's gone through our 90-day program with Rachel. And that program comes with, 6 bi-weekly calls with Dr. Rachel. I do a 1-hour, intro mentorship, and just to get you kind of guided in there, help you craft your, intention and your wisdom statement. And that's all fun stuff. That's really what tethers you to the practice of the 4-step framework, which is consistency plus frequency multiplied by intention plus introspection leads to your change of reality, your shift of awareness, your transformative process, however you want to look at that. And then after 90 days, as Dr. Rachel mentioned, it's important to take, 30 days off, 60 days off. And this is something that y'all don't need to take for the rest of your life, and you don't need to use it as a crutch. And as a business owner here, I'll be the first one to tell you, it's probably, not the most sticky, as Warren Buffett would say, hence why he's an investor in Coca-Cola. It's sticky, pun intended. And, people just drink Coca-Cola, all day long. But we want you to have the ability to develop that self-awareness within yourselves. And we hope that you don't have to take microdose ever again. But if you want to be able to use it, we're here for you. So schedule a time on my calendar, and I'd love to meet, whoever wants to learn more about what we offer. And, there's a variety of workbooks and integration exercises, tech support, your own, customer success concierge, and you're well taken care of and well supported here. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of community-centered things that Brian's been building up and working on, which is part of me coming in and working with him as well. Part part of what we're doing is offering coaching to people who are microdosing. So you have someone you can check in with, every other week or so during your 90-day program, and talk to about these things. I hear you, Ben, because some of the journeys that I've taken, I have absolutely been like, I don't think I'm ever doing that again. Like, helpful, but this is not, this is not for fun necessarily. But I've had the benefit of having the guides and also having the integration meetings, sessions afterwards with my guides, and talking through those things and seeing where to implement various parts of my life and that kind of thing. So I do think the community aspect is really important when you're going through this process. And if you haven't had a lot of that yet, I mean, this is a good place to be. And again, just trusted friends, people that understand, people that, there's a lot out there, as I'm experiencing in my own life, that people just don't understand because of the status of where these medicines are in the legal system. But, finding those people that you can talk with and have some community around. And like Brian said, too, there's so much out there, workbooks, journaling prompts, suggestions for different activities to do, like going and just being out in nature. That's a nice, if you take your microdose and then go take a walk outside, that's a nice way to set that, like, set and setting. So we talk a lot about set and setting in this space here. And I work with a lot of healers here. I'm in Salt Lake City, actually. So you can have an intention. I mean, I think it's perfectly legitimate to have an intention to be playful. So I think sometimes that's something a psilocybin journey can offer you. You can have an intention to have, you might call it sacred play, like where your purpose is to maybe be with a group of people that are close to you and bond and do enjoyable childlike things together, something like that. I do think the party scene is very different. And so that's not my preference either. But, I do think you can use these medicines in a lot of different ways. But I think the crucial point is that you have kind of some intention that feels right for you. And so for some of the journeys I've had, I mean, I was like, I need to see my trauma. Like, I need to go in and see what that is in a way that I can process it without freezing up. So that's one of the things that I think can be helpful as well, is when you're in that altered state of consciousness, you can access things in the subconscious differently. You can access hard things, repressed things that don't feel scary in the same way, where you just freeze up and disconnect again. So back to connection, right? So I think sometimes the intention you might have with some of this is, processing and accepting some of those traumatic things that have happened to you. I do think the medicines are very helpful. It's like they give you this helpful container where you can now deal with those things in a new way because you're in that altered state. So intention is important. Set and setting is important. So I do appreciate you bringing that up.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. I'm going to hop off
thanks,
here
Ben.
and let you get back to it. Thanks for answering the questions. It's
Hope
great
to
meet
see you
y'all.
again.
I'll definitely be looking into it.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. All right. Great talk. Feeling connected? I know. I definitely am. So,
Yes.
if there's any burning desires for questions, if not, calendar's in there. Hope to see you. Sign up. I wanted to close this discussion off with another, fun writing that I took some notes on during some research. And trust the clarity of consciousness. Be in the world, but not of it. Be in the world, but not trapped by it. This is way too important to take seriously. Self-liberation through awareness awakens all aspects, appearances, and manifestations. Desire keeps us at face off with the impermanence of a reality. We are not trying to make something up that isn't. What our jobs are as humans are to awaken, to becoming one with all of it, and become an instrument to the larger orchestra of the universe. We become a conduit through which truth or higher truth manifests on this plane. True connection is when thought ceases. So with that said,
Good stuff. Should we do you want to do our activity?
oh yeah, we're going to do that.
I didn't see
Forgot about that.
I didn't see anybody come in with any other questions, but if something comes up, feel free to throw that in the chat there. If we want to pull you up again, we can. So this one, I have been in higher states of stress in the last few weeks than some other parts of my life. And so I'm going to actually, this intentionally brings you to a bit of a state of stress so you can feel yourself, help yourself out of it, if I can say it that way. So a lot of times this EFT tapping is used if you're feeling in particular in a state of stress or anxiety or kind of like a fight flight place. It actually asks you to zone in on it, have awareness of it, and then we're going to tap different parts of our body. These are different spots that run along the meridians, acupressure points, essentially. So a lot of these things, we're going to touch our face and hands and different parts of our body. I practice Qigong and I teach Qigong in the community. So Qigong is like Tai Chi, same Qi, but it just means the practice of moving energy. And so it's a very, very ancient Chinese practice of wellness, essentially. So I want to have everybody that's on here listening with me, I want you to just kind of sit. And if you want to close your eyes, you're welcome to. Sit and kind of center in. And what I'm going to have you do actually is bring up something stressful. It could be a very small thing. You can bring up a small thing or an annoyance that you've had recently. And I want you to actually bring that to mind. So I'm bringing mine to mind and I feel it in my gut. I feel this like kind of dis-ease and like uneasiness and kind of, some kind of bubbling in my stomach. Okay. So you're bringing yourself to a little bit of a state of stress. So we'll go through the tapping routine as you're thinking about that. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to use all 4 fingers and you're going to tap the side of your hand here. And so you can do this out loud or kind of in your mind. Say the thing that's stressing you out. Okay. So, my legal situation is stressing me out. I release the stress from my body. My situation is stressing me out. I release the stress on my body. You're still tapping. My situation is stressing me out. I release the stress in my body. So now you're going to come up. You're going to take your 2 fingers, both sides. You're going to come right in between the eyebrows here. Okay. Right in between the eyes and between the eyebrows. And you're going to tap there. So I'm tapping here and I'm doing the same thing in my mind or out loud. I feel the stress in my body. I release it. This particular situation is causing me stress. I release it. This situation is causing me stress. I release it. Okay. So next point you're going to come to is the bone on the sides of your eyes, not your temples, but just in front there. So you're tapping. You're feeling that maybe bubbling in your stomach, or sometimes it's in your chest. Sometimes it's in your hips. Maybe clenching the jaw, you may be squinting the eyes, and you're releasing. Your amygdala's triggered by stress. So we're going straight to the amygdala and we're saying, okay, we recognize you, you're there. We know you're triggered. We're going to release you now. Okay. Next spot is right under the eyes here. So you're going to tap right under the eyes, kind of the bone there. I release the stress in my body. I release the stress in my body. I release the stress in my body. Okay. Next one, you're going to just take one hand. You're going to go right under the nose and you're going to tap. You're going to feel that thumping against your teeth, right? Right in between the lips and the nose. You're going to release that stress in your body. Release, release. Next spot is under the chin, beneath the lip and the chin there. Again, you're kind of tapping. You feel that on your teeth, on your bottom set of teeth there. Releasing that stress from your body, releasing that stress from your body. So the next one is a little bit of a funny spot. It's about 3 inches under your armpit. So if you can get both hands under there, you can do one at a time too. So you're tapping all 4 fingers right underneath that spot and you're releasing. And so you can look up EFT tapping, and there's videos that show you this sequence and all of those things. There's a whole program on it. I think Nick Orner is the guy's name. But you're releasing that stress in your body. Then you're going to come up to the very top of the head. There's a meridian point right up there, very top of the head. You're tapping up there, releasing the stress in your body. Release, release. Okay, I think I remembered them all. I think I got them all. I'll double check myself later. But now that you've kind of gone through that, notice how your body feels. Like I can definitely say my stomach is not so tensed up. Like it's a pretty fast acting kind of strategy. So Brian, I don't know if you have any feedback on that or how that felt.
I do that in the sauna a lot.
Hmm.
The gym I go to, sit in the sauna and tap, meditate a little bit. But I know Ave here does a lot of tapping. I think that's the first time I heard of it was through Ave. But very functional, and we have all our videos recorded as well, and we do a lot of these exercises in every workshop. The last one we did was ear pulling and
Qigong, yeah.
Qigong.
Massage the ears, opening up some of the meridians. Yeah, I'll bring in some more Qigong.
Yeah, so when you're sitting in traffic sometime, just start tapping, and it's okay to look like a weirdo, right? That's connecting, getting back to the basics and not caring what other people think.
And think about how you were as a kid, but
Yeah.
before all the judgments and the criticism came, you just did. You look at preschoolers; they're so weird, but they're so themselves, and we lose that. We lose that as we get older.
Thank you for everyone for joining. I appreciate it. I know Dr. Rachel does as well.
Absolutely.
I hope you learned something today. We never know where these conversations are going to go. We have a very loose structure around the topic. And if Ben's still there, thank you for joining the stage.
Yes,
these happen every month. Yeah, so you all should be on our email list, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can tap in live. We all understand that everyone has busy schedules and different time zones, so your time spent with us is very, very grateful for that. So taking time out of your day to learn a little bit about this practice and hopefully better yourselves and connect more. So with that said, I'm pretty good to go. Any closing remarks?
Nobody has any questions? I don't see anything coming in chat, so yeah, I think we're good here. Yeah, just take some of this in and rewatch it later. And if things resonate with you, not everything resonates with everybody. So I always remind people, whatever resonated with you, take that. That means something. Whatever gives you the little bit of like, oh, I connected, right? I just connected with that aspect or that quote or, this part of the conversation. Take that back with you and do some reflection on it. You don't have to write in a journal. That's a really nice way to do it. I've been doing memo journaling, like audio recording myself just in moments. Sometimes it feels like, if I'm pressed for time, I'll just open up my phone and do an audio recording, and then just kind of get my thoughts out. Sometimes it's a vent dump. Sometimes it's, some kind of introspective thought that I have and I want to record. I want to say it out loud. When you add any element of something to your thoughts, like writing or speaking, what you're doing is called actually dual encoding. You're using two modalities to kind of get that into your psyche, which is helpful. It'll help it stick better. And then it's an interesting exercise to go back and listen or look at those things that sometimes they're reminders for you when you're having a hard time, right? So with all that, I think I'm good on my end. How are you, Brian?
I'm good. I am going on these Instagram names are I know the Instagram handles and I can see the people. It's funny. I haven't been on our Instagram page in a long time, just because we're doing all these other fun things in the company. So thank you so much, Instagram folks. You've been with us for a long time. So I'm going on a, last minute full send to Burning Man tomorrow. I got
Awesome.
I got a vehicle pass given to me, and a super, super cheap ticket. And it's only 2.5 hours from where I'm sitting right now. So it's very hard not to go. Even though I said, I'm not going this year, I'm not going this year, I'm not going this year, I have friends out there on the playa texting me. We just went in the sauna. Like so-and-so was, riding our friends back in the wagon on the mini bike, and it broke down, and I'm like, Burning Man shenanigans. I love it. So I'm going to go connect with the whole Burning Man community and maybe take some psychedelics. I don't know. I'll report back. I'll report back the findings and bring all that goodness back when I integrate back here in Tahoe, which is probably the nicest place to integrate when you get back from, a dusty, windy, sweaty playa. So that's what I'll be doing. Yeah.
Connect.
Yeah, it's super minimal. Just packing the car up with a few things.
Space, right?
Yeah, and my friend that texted me, I was like, "Oh, that's your trailer, so I'm going to be sleeping in that with you, bud." So yeah, we all come together out there in community, and all the things you think you need out there is, a lot of it goes untouched because it's just everywhere. So looking forward to that. And it's been a good week. And thank you, Rachel, for everything. And thank you for everyone for participating in this workshop. Hope to see you soon.
This opportunity. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Cheers. Bye, everybody. Have a great week. And happy Labor Day weekend, right? It was made so we didn't have to produce. Remember, don't do anything. To be. Get on that to be list. All right.
Get on the to be. Yeah, I love it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.